Hey guys, welcome back to Adlib Talk, and this is my review for The Matrix Resurrections. I did not hate The Matrix Resurrections. I actually did quite like it, although I will come out straight away and say that it has a ton, and I mean a ton of problems. But as always, before we get into the review, don't forget to leave a like on this video if you enjoy it, and please do consider subscribing, as those are the two main ways you can help support my channel right here at Adlib Talk. Cheers, and let's get right into that review.
After all these years, to be going back to where it all started. Back to the Matrix.
So, The Matrix Resurrections is a sci-fi action film that was produced, co-written and directed by Lana Wachowski. And it serves as a sequel to the 2003 The Matrix Revolutions. It has some returning actors like Keanu Reeves, got Carrie-Anne Moss, Jade Pinkett Smith, and Lambert Wilson, together with fresh faces like Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, Jessica Henwick, Jonathan Groff, Neil Patrick Harris, and Priyanka Chopra Jonas. The basic setting of the movie is that it is now 60 years after the events of the last Matrix film, and we get to see Neo living a normal life. Obviously, it is anything but. He is a video game developer who seems to be losing the ability to distinguish between reality and dreams. However, a group of rebels manage to enter into this alternate version of the Matrix and save him. They do this with the help of Morpheus. Well, it's not exactly Morpheus, or at least Morpheus we remember from the first three movies. They still, however, get the job done. After some convincing by Neo, the band, together with a number of generals from Io, which is the human bastion we get to see in this movie, they decide to attempt to save Trinity, who, like Neo, was also confined in a pod controlled by the machines. So that is, in general, the plot we get to experience in The Matrix Resurrections. And yes, I know you're already thinking this sounds lame as hell, and I agree, it kind of is. The writing is at times quite abysmal, and that is to say, it's not just the storytelling, which is sometimes really, really weak, but it's just the dialogue. A lot of the dialogue is incredibly cringy, and sometimes too much at times. Think back to how cool everything was in the first Matrix movie, and imagine taking all those cool characters and instead bringing in a bunch of geeks who talk about the Matrix. Yeah, that's how we start this movie. However, slowly, as I kind of thought about this movie after watching it, started to notice this might have all been Lana Wachowski's intention. Now, it's important here to look at the pre-production process of this movie to better understand what was going on in Lana's mind as she made this movie. So Warner Brothers had approached the Wachowskis several times to make another Matrix sequel. We even have that mentioned, not so subtly, in the movie itself. The Wachowskis had always declined due to lack of interest, or either because of feeling that the trilogy was done, the story was told, and it had concluded. However, the death of Lana's parents, as well as a close friend of hers, seemed to trigger a response which led her to thinking up the plot for The Matrix Resurrections. And these are Lana Wachowski's own words in an interview. Suddenly, my brain just exploded the whole story. I couldn't have my mum and dad, yet suddenly I had Neo and Trinity, arguably the two most important characters in my life. She also continues to say that it was immediately comforting to have these two characters alive again, and it's super simple. You can look at it and say, okay, these two people died, and okay, bring these two people back to life, and oh, doesn't that feel good? Yeah, it did. It's simple, and this is what art does, and this is what stories do. They comfort us, and they're important. So with all this in mind, it's quite clear that Lana Wachowski was not ready to make just any other sequel with a lot of member berries.
Yeah, remember Alex? Remember? Hey, remember Ghostbusters? Oh, I remember.
I mean, it does have a lot of member berries, but damn, does this movie do member berries the right way? It does it in style and it with a nice kind of wink, acknowledging that the creator of the movie knows exactly what's going on here. I think this is one of the movies that truly does respect its audience. And if you're here to experience a Matrix movie, which will have more of the same from the trilogy, lots of action, lots of bullet time, car chases, and lots of nostalgia, you're in the wrong place. And that is why I think this movie has had such a negative backlash. Instead, Lana and the rest of the creators of The Matrix Resurrections went for something new and bold. Yes, it is incredibly flawed, and I will soon point out all of those flaws, but I think that this point is very, very important to understand this movie. What we got here, instead of all that I mentioned before, was a literal meta statement about what the franchise has become and what the industry has become. And we also get a pretty damn good love story, if I say so myself. I thought that the performances by Keanu and Carrie-Anne Moss, especially the latter, were quite on point and they exude chemistry. Now, let's be clear, Keanu Reeves has never been this amazing actor, but the chemistry that he and Carrie-Anne Moss have in this movie is brilliant. There's just something about the two of them that really convinces me that they are in love. The cafe scenes were excellent, as was the climactic scene between the two. It is the romance between them that truly pushes this movie forward, and it's what kept me interested, forgetting all the meta commentary that was going on, that yes is smart, yes is witty, but obviously not enough to push forward the story. Now, focusing on performances, I actually quite like Jessica Henwick as Bugs, as well as Neil Patrick Harris as Neo's therapist. On the other hand, I thought that our new Agent Smith, Jonathan Groff, was very, very disappointing, as was Yahya Abdul Mateen as Morpheus. Moving on to the visuals and action, and yes, I'll admit that I was quite bitterly disappointed here. Most of the action is weak and completely forgettable. I've heard theories that this was done on purpose by Lana to sabotage the movie, and I think that's absolute nonsense. But yes, I can kind of confirm that it looks like a small budget HBO series most of the time, which did quite surprise me, as it did have quite a big budget. And again, they say that same thing in the movie. I will admit that I did, however, quite enjoy the lighting here. I noticed that the scenes in this Matrix were much brighter and much more colorful than the original 3 Matrix movies, which were quite dark and had that like a green tinge to it. With regard to the action, the only scene that really stuck to my mind was the hive mind scene, where we see people throwing themselves out of windows and off ledges to try and stop our heroes. That scene was quite good, quite well shot, but apart from that, most of it is pretty forgettable, considering that Matrix is really well known for how it revolutionized action due to bullet time and so on. That aspect is, yes, I will admit, very, very disappointing. I would also like to mention, finally, that I did quite enjoy the moody, but also sometimes heart-pounding soundtrack by Johnny Klimek and Tom Tykwer. I've always loved the Matrix soundtracks, and this continues the tradition. Now, yes, if you had to ask me which member berry I most preferred, Spider-Man No Way Home or The Matrix Resurrections, everyone's going to hate me for saying it, but I did prefer The Matrix Resurrections. It's smart, it's clever. I mean, you've got scenes in when Lana Wachowski is literally telling you to your face that she doesn't want to be making this movie and she's not enjoying the experience. But all of this meta commentary, the strong themes this movie tackles, and just how entertainingly it is all presented, whilst also having an incredible romance between Neo and Trinity to push forward the second half of this movie, means that I honestly think that The Matrix Resurrections is one of the most underrated movies of 2021, and honestly deserves a 3.5 out of 5 rating, and my recommendation for anyone who will not be put off either by the meta commentary or as well the massive focus on the relationship and the love between Neo and Trinity. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed that review. And if you did, don't forget to leave a like on this video and please do consider subscribing. Cheers. And I'll see you guys next time right here on Adlib Talk.